My name is Nawal Houghton and I am your divorce coach. I'm a divorce coach based in the Hertfordshire area, and I see both men and women that are undergoing their divorce or separation journey. I help clients strategise their particular divorce or separation process, and I do that by reducing the confusion, conflict and cost that can often arise in those circumstances. I've been asked by the Frolo Community to answer some questions that you've all asked around divorce or separation, and I'm going to do my best to do that for you. The first area that questions have been asked is property. Now, first question is, can you move back into the marital home with your kids due to a change of circumstances? I left 15 months ago and I am named as a joint owner of the property. It's quite difficult to answer this without knowing the full facts of the case or any particular background, but a very general answer would be that unless there is some legal restriction, for instance, an occupation order that's been made against you, there should be no technical reason why you cannot move back into the marital home. For on an emotional basis, this might be slightly difficult if you moved away. Are there still restrictions within, or some conflict between you and another party? Is the other party living there? Are they living with somebody else? So again, without knowing the full facts, it's quite hard to answer fully. But generally speaking, there should be no restriction unless something legally has been put in place. The second question is, what is considered a fair percentage to divide the equity in a family home, taking into account the fact that the remaining mortgage is a large sum and I will be paying it alone? Again, with finances, you don't necessarily look at just one aspect, and it also does depend whether this is a divorce or separation situation. We often wish there was a clear mathematical format in order to discuss finances in a divorce, but there isn't. It does start off on the general premise of 50-50, but it does move, and it depends on whether there are any other assets in the marriage, who is the primary carer, who's the main breadwinner, do both parties work. So there isn't a number that you can give. It does really depend on a number of different factors. So those are the property questions. The question is around co-parenting and whether I have any tips or techniques that I can recommend. Essentially, the primary thing to remember here is that transition for children is really difficult. And what is transition? Transition is a child moving from one household to another. That in itself, getting used to the environment again or settling back in, is exhausting and quite hard for a child. So when it comes to co-parenting, the number one tip here is try and operate from the same page, i.e. have the same rules, to the extent possible around some big things. And that can be use of electronics, homework, discipline, bedtimes, so that essentially the child or children realise that from both homes, it's more or less the same. When it comes to big decisions, try and do that together, and not necessarily in the presence of the children. The children have to feel that there's a sense of unity from both parents, and this also minimises their sometimes sneaky ability to play one parent off against the other. So do have a clear consensus. Think about a co-parenting plan. What ideas will you share together? What discussions will you have around doctors, schooling, whatever it may be? Come together and have some set rules that you can agree to, simply because it then avoids having any potential disagreements later on that just creates animosity between you both. The parenting question is around the treatment of children. The question here is that an ex-partner is treating one child more favourably than the other by seeing that child twice a week, but barely calling the eldest child. And what is my advice about this? First of all, how difficult for you, the parent, to see two children being treated differently, but also for the child to be seen that they are treated less favourably than the other child. In this instance, it's certainly, it's difficult to answer because I don't have any, background, whether there's any issues in that relationship, whether there is any toxicity for a parent to treat two children differently. But generally, my advice would be to talk to that parent and make them understand that treating these two children differently is not kind, it's not good parenting, it's not in the best interests of the children either. You may also want to try the form of mediation if you feel that you can't overcome these issues, to potentially iron out any disparity that there may be. There may be some unresolved issues for your ex-partner that he feels he can't communicate with you and would be better placed potentially in a setup where there is a third party that may cushion the blow or, alleviate the communication between you. Questions are around conflict, and the question is, how can I stop rising to the bait? My ex knows exactly what buttons to push. I do practice grey rock, but it doesn't work all the time, and every time it doesn't, another entry goes in the solicitor's letters. Is there anything else I can do? For those that don't know, grey rock is a particular way to communicate or to liaise with a particularly toxic ex-partner. Now, there are a variety of different techniques, methods in which to communicate with a toxic ex, but though you might read about them, learn them, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're implementing them in the right way. And the mere fact that you say that you're triggered means that though you know about grey rock, it perhaps isn't the right technique for you. When it comes to being emotionally triggered by the ex, there has to be a lot of work that's done internally on an emotional basis, which then means that whatever trigger technique the toxic ex will use, it's redundant because it just doesn't work with you. As a divorce coach, I actually specialise in divorcing or separating from toxic personalities, and it may mean that you need some extra help to assist you on that particular journey, so please do get in touch. And if it's not a divorce coach, you may need some separate counselling, because essentially from an emotional perspective you're still being triggered, which means there's still a lot going on there for you. Conflict question is very similar to the previous one. What can I do to stop being triggered by my ex? He writes long emails which paint him as a victim and make it seem like he is desperate to be more involved in our child's life, yet he doesn't see her out of his own free will. I have never prevented him from seeing her. I find it really triggering and want to reply, but I know nothing good will come out of it. Any advice? Again, this is all about our emotional well-being and awareness. The first thing is to really try and understand the type of personality type that you're dealing with. Essentially, someone that triggers you in that own way does it because they can, and there's always a reason behind why they're doing it. Some may be for attention supply or just because they actually get a sick kick out of doing it. In terms of not being triggered, that basically means that internally you still have quite a lot of issues that aren't resolved yet. By understanding the type of personality that you're dealing with, you'll see the game plan that's being used against you, and you'll understand the cycle. And once you understand the cycle that is being portrayed, you'll be able to understand, the email is sent to me because he or she wants me to react like this. And when you start to see this bigger picture, you'll see that you're not being triggered anymore. Essentially, what you need is some help with understanding emotionally what is going on for you. As I've said before, as a divorce coach, I do help clients deal with, particularly toxic exes, and helping you understand what is going on for you when you receive an email like that and what it's triggering. You may also want to consider counselling. So do reach out if anyone out there is having that sort of trigger emotional response when your ex is sending you a letter like that. It's quite a complex scenario, and there may be sort of other things going on in the background that help me make it clear to you what is going on for you.